Thank you so much again for accepting this interview request. You and I have been friends for a while, and it's actually going to be a year in April. If people don't know that you and I have met through a business coaching course, and a bunch of Miami ladies got together, and since then we've just been connected through Instagram and stuff like that, and just attending the same events. So I'm so lucky to have met you, and looking forward to sharing your story, sharing what you offer, because I think, as I mentioned before we got on, I think you are amazing, and I highly preach you and your services, because I think you're so great, and I just think you're such a light. So before we get into all this stuff, I just want people to know your story. How did you become a self-compassion coach? And just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started with that realm.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure everyone's like, this is such a big story. So first of all, thank you for having me here. I love your work, and I love how committed you are to the work you do. So thanks. I'm honored to be here. So I grew up in a really great and loving Latin home in the New York, New Jersey area. And I think my true self-compassion journey really started in my late 20s when I was in an abusive workplace. And it was really, really, you could say an abusive, your first real confrontation with abuse, whether it's with someone or like in the workplace or a relationship, it's a moment to really know yourself. And I had this moment where I saw other people being abused, I was being abused, and it put me into really an emotional dark place. And instead of internalizing, I was lucky enough to, I was kind of alone. My parents had just moved to Florida, my friends were far away, and I had this moment where I had to kind of call upon myself to either step up or sit in this space. And, as I went through this journey, I kind of grew in my own value of who I was and knew that I didn't deserve to be stuck there. As I left that job, those limiting beliefs of that abusive experience can carry on to other spaces. Like, it took me probably a year and a half in my next job to not believe all the negative things I was told in the last workspace. But I also noticed it took a toll on my body. So I enrolled in an online health coaching program called IIN. And one of the biggest pieces that I learned from that was this idea of primary food and secondary food. And so the founder of the school believes that secondary food is what we put in our mouth, but primary food are all the emotions, life experiences, life aspects that impact how we think about ourselves and how we then nourish ourselves in our bodies, right? And so even though I came out with this nutrition certificate, I was like, no, this is more than nutrition. Like, what's happening with my body and my mind is bigger than this. And so I landed in meditation and mindfulness. I did Deepak Chopra's 21-day challenge, back in the day. And my brother and I used to do these Buddhist Zen 2-hour sit and walk meditations. And with those, after a few weeks, people at work would be like, oh my God, you look so different. What are you doing? And the only thing I had changed was doing these 2.5-hour meditation things at this Zen Buddhist center. And I realized, wow, our cultivation of our mind can really impact the way people perceive us, even if we don't notice immediately. Right. That led me to kind of cultivating that. And eventually I landed in the master's I'm about to finish, which is a master's in health and wellness coaching with a concentration in integrative wellness practices, which I call a fancy way of saying mindfulness. And in this master's, I've, on top of learning different aspects, the philosophies of mindfulness and meditation, where it all comes from, I've also learned about a specific researcher named Kristen Neff, who is based out of the University, UT Austin, and she has researched self-compassion. And I read her studies on self-compassion, and I thought about the folks I have coached and the people in my classes that we have to coach with. I thought, wow, for me, that really resonated with me as the root of that which ails or is the root of the suffering for those people who come to me. So I really loved focusing on that.
So that's what led you down this road and calling yourself a self-compassionate coach.
And it's almost a decade of this journey. Yeah. So it doesn't happen overnight. It's been a solid decade to get to where I am now.
Yeah. Oh my God, when you were talking to me about how this all began with like a toxic environment and feeling abusive. I know so many people that are going through that, and I think maybe I even shared that with you a little bit when we first met, of my first experience with that and how debilitating that could really be and affecting your life and everything. So yeah, I can definitely understand why you led that road. So I guess now that we know your background and how you got to where you are today, and I just love everything that you share on social media and all your services. Can you give us a little bit of what you do, the services you provide to help people with their lack of self-compassion?
Yes, I have a lot. I have everything I do is coaching. So my services are, I would say, fall under the idea of the umbrella of coaching. So I do traditional one-on-one coaching, which, typically either 3 to 6 or 10 sessions, depending on what the client has and how much they feel they're ready to work on. I do also what I call a clarity session, which is really fun. It's for those who are like, I'm not sure about coaching. Let's do a one-off. I do a mix of card reading plus coaching.
Okay.
I have these cards that they're based on the chakras. So if you're not familiar with the chakras, the Chinese they believe in meridian points and energy centers. And in the Indian, tradition, there's the chakras, which are energy centers. And primarily in this Western world, we're familiar with 7 of them. And so this deck that I use, this oracle deck, works from the root to the third eye. And it's, some people get a little confused because they feel it's a little woo-woo and mystical, but really it's talking about where are you holding energy in your body as it pertains to your situation, and how is that either supporting what you want or holding you back? And then we do some coaching based on that. So it's an hour. So if you want an intro to coaching and you want a fun way of approaching it, we talk about energy, we talk about your situation, we talk about where you're holding in your body and how you can support it that way. And then the last thing I do is I do group workshops.
Okay.
Coach on emotions through the use of essential oils. So, yes, self-compassion is, we'll get into the definitions and stuff in a little bit, but I also believe that a lot of it is people don't know how to handle or work with feelings. And on top of that, people are not really familiar with what emotions or feelings they're repressing. And essential oils are scientifically known to be tied to parts of the brain that tie scent to memory. And so this really cool workshop that I have allows you to, really just smell things and write things down, and then it's like a reveal where all of a sudden you find out, oh, you hated this scent because it's tied to this emotion which you're not really working with. And then we coach in a group. How do you support those energies? How do you support those emotions so that you can move forward more fully as a human being?
That sounds wonderful. And that makes so much sense. I mean, the same thing with music, and I can see that with the sense, like it brings us back to a place of either happiness or sadness, or just that place of several years ago. So I can definitely see how that could be so helpful. Sounds wonderful. And for those of you, I've done the clarity coaching with the Oracle cards, and that was wonderful. I still always refer back to it. We were just talking about it before we jumped on, so highly recommend that. It's wonderful. But you did mention that we wanted to get into the definition of self-compassion. I want to know, what does that mean to you, being self-compassionate?
Okay, I love this. So I'm actually a linguist. So by training, I was in higher education for a long time, and I was a language major. So when I always loved words and their meanings and really how they impact our energy, right? There are words that people hear and they are thrown back by, and there are words that people hear and they're like, oh, that's so nice. Even if they don't know what it means, there's energy to words. And for a long time, I was like, oh, well, what does compassion mean? Just compassion by itself. And I found out that it means to suffer with someone. And I was like, wow, it doesn't really feel that. It's compassion sounds so soft and so gentle, but really the root of it is the sense of suffering within the context of helping someone out. So when I think about self-compassion, and probably why it's so difficult, because self-compassion would then imply that there's a sense of you need to learn how to sit with your own suffering and hold space for yourself in the same way that you would expect someone else to do that for you. Right?
Oh God, yeah. So true.
Not a lot of people are, what I'm learning, especially through mindfulness, I'm trying, I have And I'll be honest, I have an inconsistent relationship with mindfulness meditation just because of schedule. But I do my best to take breath moments. But at the end of the day, people are not comfortable. What I'm learning is people are not comfortable with sitting with themselves, whether it's being alone, eating on their own, sitting in silence, taking a moment just for themselves. Sitting with yourself is so hard for people, let alone to sit with your suffering, you know?
And why do you think that is, though?
I think that, you know, we're in a society that is so action oriented, and the idea of sitting with yourself really requires pause and inaction and reflection rather than action.
Okay.
I think also we are prone to look for answers outside of ourselves than to trust that we have the answers within ourselves.
Isn't that amazing? I think about that all the time. Now that I'm doing my coaching sessions, and it did take me a long time to get here. I'm someone that always suffered from depression. You know, I grew up in a household, just to be honest here, that we don't talk about our feelings, and we just shut down until we kind of burst, type of thing.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just amazing to me how, like, just learning those simple things or just hearing those simple things can make you be like a little bit more self-aware, I guess, in your day-to-day. Or it's funny now when things are a bit of a trigger for me, or I see someone that maybe reminds someone that used to be a trigger for me. I actually, in my mind, I kind of tell myself, like, this is a trigger. This person reminds me of this, and this is the only reason why I'm maybe feeling this way. But I think just again, being self-aware of that and realizing those are your triggers, just gives you more of that control and make you realize, okay, like, I know what situation I'm currently in right now. Like, let me be nice to myself, because I understand that I'm in this space right now. I can't leave the situation at the moment or anything, depending on the situation. But I think it's just gaining that control that, okay, I get why this is happening, or I get why I'm feeling this way. It's gonna be over in 20 minutes, or it's gonna be over in 10 minutes, or I can now reflect back of, this is why this person is reacting this way.
Right.
Because I've experienced it before.
Right.
And then turning around and having compassion for them.
Right.
So it's taken me years to get to that point. So yeah, I love it all. I love it all. But
I love that experience too. So see, you survived it. Your feelings didn't.
Yeah, and see, that's another thing too. Like, I always try to tell people that, because I think a lot of people like tend to be like, well, this happened to me, instead of saying, like, you survived it, you're here, you went through that, and look how strong you are, you can handle anything, type thing. I'm thinking of someone right now in my head that's like, I know that's like suffering right now, so it just makes me think of that. But before we go into a tangent, I know that we talked about like the reasons why people lack self-compassion, and I guess I know that there's a lot of things that people say that like, I guess, kind of shows them the lack of self-compassion. Like, some of the things that I hear are, you know, I want to follow my passion, but I feel so guilty, or all these different things. I guess let's dive into that first, because then I want to go into like maybe some action steps do you think that people can take to be more self-compassionate, I guess, with themselves.
Right.
So I guess I hear this session. I wrote some of these down. So for those that are struggling right now with like feeling that their let's say their boss, they don't have to be entrepreneurs, but their boss, their family, is just continuously knocking them down. Like, how would someone maybe overcome that, or, you know, maybe have self-compassion for those that don't like reciprocate it back to them? Like, what do you think about those type of situations?
So in you know, when I think about this idea of me versus another, right? Like someone at work or someone in the family, the idea is, you know, I have taken courses with Gabby Bernstein, who's learned from Marianne Williamson, who learned from the Course in Miracles. And one of the quotes that I love from all of these teaching is the idea that love did not create this, only love is real. And so this moment where you can realize, okay, this is not a loving experience. If this is not a loving experience, how can I see this in a different way? Like sometimes we get so attached to our stories of what things mean to us, and we hold on so dearly, like if it were life and death, instead of saying, okay, yes, this sucks. This is not to say like we're gonna be like everything's fine, nothing's wrong, but like to say, okay, this doesn't feel great, but I can release my attachment to this, and I can try to see this in different ways. And the more we practice seeing something from different angles, the more we can release the tension that holding on to our story creates, especially with another person, right? Like we begin to create, when something doesn't go in our perceived way, create the stories around it. Well, that colleague of mine just always does things to block me from my projects, or my mom always treats me like a kid. And when we recreate a story, maybe we release our attachments to those stories, those energetic ties to this belief system, right? Because it's also a belief system we create. We start creating belief systems around this, right? These stories
right.
When we, when I think about mindfulness and Buddhism and all this, they say attachment is the root of all suffering. Not just to physical things, but to thoughts.
Yes.
Practices. So as we release our attachment to my boss sucks, or my mom did this, or my dad, blah, 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 we can begin to just build our own sense of self, and maybe even begin telling stories that serve and inspire rather than keep us in this negative space. Also, the more we release our attachment, the more we can create opportunities, because I think the other thing that happens is that when we're stuck in this perspective of this sucks or this person isn't great, we also don't allow for opportunities. Like, how can we problem solve instead of sit in this negative space? Open our mind, right?
Yeah. So tell me, if I think of, I guess for me, again, like as I mentioned, like it's taking me a long time to get to this place of being self-aware, trying to detach myself from the situation or realize that this may be a trigger for me, and maybe like have more compassion for myself because I know it could be a trigger for me, or even question why it still maybe bothers me. Again, all about that self-awareness. But if I'm someone that is new to this realm, and they're really struggling with that, what would you say are like first steps? Because I guess like when I think of, oh yeah, I'm being self-aware, or maybe I can think of things differently, detach myself, like that might be a little bit more advanced for someone. Like that's fine for me, maybe because I've been in this world, in this space for a while. But for someone that's new to this, what would you say they should start doing, or what they should start practicing to bring more self-love to themselves?
So the first thing that comes up for me is breathe before you think. Right? Because when we are in a negative space, we go into that sympathetic nervous system of flight or fight, we cut off oxygenation to our brain, and we act that in places of a non-clear mind space, right? And so I really like the idea, when I'm kind of stressed and I'm conscious that something's happening, I really just take a breath and I just begin to breathe and slow myself down, because often reactive people, they're not breathing, they're starting to talk and they're doing this, and you can see that they're not connecting. They're connecting to their anger rather than to themselves or higher selves, the people around, right? And so I say breathe, because breathing will bring back oxygenation to your brain so you can think clearly, and you can really come from a more centered space, where whether you do nothing or you do something, it'll be a more centered experience if you can just take a couple of deep breaths before you think or say
anything.
I think that for people who have not started this journey, it's not going to be an immediate reflex, right? We're at a point where we've practiced this, so I could be like, oh, I'm being triggered. Like, you don't even say it. Like, you don't even notice to stop as it's happening. You're able to like matrix, like be like Neo and shift into the new paradigm. But for people who need to practice it, there is a sense of they need to cultivate some type of mindfulness. whether it's meditation, whether it's journaling, whether it's, you know, walking out in nature, like taking a walk on your break or lunch rather than sitting at your desk and brooding over that meeting. Things that are going to help you clear your mind, allow you the space to see things in a different way and release yourself from the attachment that those things hold.
So good. Yeah, meditation for me has been like one of the biggest things. Do you have like a resource that you normally go to that helps you?
So there's so many things these days. I remember when I started over 10 years ago, there was just like not a lot. And it was like, you know, very like, you know, older like hippies who are doing like these Zen Buddhist things, and they talk to us, right? Like now there's so many resources, right? There's Insight Timer, which is a free app on your phone. I don't know if you guys know about that. That's one great resource. There's Unplug, which has like a whole bunch of, you know, really well-known meditation teachers. YouTube is an infinite source of cool things.
Yeah.
Really an exciting place where if this is something that you want to cultivate, there's so many more resources than ever before.
And do you find maybe journaling one, like kind of like thought downloads, kind of helpful as well?
I think journaling helps, and there are different ways, right? Some people get the downloads where they're able to sit and then download and write, but then there's also something that I've learned is this idea of, you know, especially for these people that are stuck with this, like, oh, this bothers me so much and I don't know how to see it in a different way, is sitting down to deconstruct your story. So I learned about this theory of story versus phenomena, right? The story is this thing that we say with all the emotions and all of our attachments, and phenomena are just the facts as they are without any emotional attachment. And so some of the things that I do for my clients is that when they're really stuck in story, I say, take the story and write it out, right? Because you have to witness what you're experiencing. Because I like, you know, fake it to make it is good, but if you don't know what you're faking, you're not really going to keep the pattern, right? So you have to witness your patterns. You have to say, okay, you write your story, you read it, and you realize, okay, I could have seen this in a different way. And when you start to break it down just as bullet point facts rather than like, and he hurt my feelings, and because of that, he's ruined my life, and yada yada. It's like, no, he didn't ruin your life. Like, you got really upset, and these opportunities didn't happen.
Right.
Whether or not this is a set of events, you can release your emotional attachment to the experience that you had. And so when you write it out, witness it, and then break it down less emotionally, you can begin to release that negative attachment.
Well, I didn't even think of it that being a practice. It's actually something that I've done for myself whenever I'm in a like cluster of thought and emotion. I actually tell myself, that's something that I always tell myself, what are the facts here?
Yes.
What are the facts here? And that honestly makes me feel so much better whenever I do that exercise, because it makes me realize, like, I'm just letting my emotions run amok.
Yes.
They're just going insane because I'm not looking at it. And I'm not saying, like, does this really make sense? Or is this really true that's happening right now? Or am I just exaggerating it? Or am I just doing something?
Right. And could I have seen it did I have to react that way? Or could I have been like, sorry, can you help me understand this a little bit more? Maybe I'm not, you see it, you know?
Yes. Yeah, that's super, super powerful. Super powerful. Yeah, definitely something you can do. And then something else that keeps coming up, and I have to say it's actually something that is hard for me. And we mentioned prior how this week has been like really crazy. I felt super burnt out this week, and I allowed myself 2 days in the evening to just watch TV.
Self-care.
And I keep hearing this with other people that I've just been talking to lately, other people that I've coached. It's funny this week, actually, how they kind of feel something is missing, right? And when we dive into the conversation, they just tell me that, yeah, all I do all day is hustle, working on my business. And it's scary for me to do anything outside of my business, because it's like I could be working on my business, or I could be bringing in more money. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that in regards to just feeling less guilt for having some enjoyment when you are in the midst of working, let's say working for yourself or doing all these things to achieve your goals? I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
So the first thing that comes up for me is anything that you do, whether it's for personal or for work, should bring you joy. You know, especially because I think about a lot of this hustle work comes a lot for our entrepreneurial friends and family. And there's a sense of like, you know, the old paradigm was like, you know, there's a sense of obligation, a sense of duty, like you just got to do this, even if you don't like it. But if you don't like what you're doing, or the actions to get you to the passion project that is your entrepreneurship, there's going to be a limit on how far that goes, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that when you begin to not hustle, but really align with activities and opportunities that really inspire you and really feel aligned with your job purpose or this entrepreneurial purpose, mm-hmm. It just looks like, I can't tell you, Belinda, how much my life has expanded in the past year and a half by making decisions that bring me joy. Mm-hmm. Not to sound all Marie Kondo-ish and say only like spark joy, but really, you know, there is no limit when you do things with joy, because you can be out until 2 a.m. and not even realize it, because it'll fulfill your spirit, it'll fulfill your job, it'll fulfill your entrepreneurship, whatever. But if you are doing something, I don't know if you notice, but when you're doing a hustle type of activity and it's not aligned, you're like, okay, I gotta go, time is wasting. There, you know, the experiences pushes you out energetically of being there. But when you choose things that are in alignment, it expands to another event or another connection. Mm-hmm. So, you know, really align with things that feel right to you. And this goes back to this idea of compassion. Like, the more you sit with yourself and really get to know yourself, the more you build your intuition. The more you build your intuition, the more you know what feels right with like your gut, your body, you're just going to be like, this feels right. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do this. And then that guilt releases, because there's so much joy that's happening in all the experiences that you choose to do. But my fear is that there's a lot of people not aligning with what intuitively is right for them. Mm-hmm. And so then there's a sense of, oh, I'm wasting time. You know, I'm doing this networking thing, but, you know, I only have like 2 hours, or, you know, I wasted $35 on that, right? Like, we waste time, we waste money. But when we love it and we get all these other, you know, there's so much abundance to be had when we really open ourselves to all of the other experiences that mm-hmm. can be had if we approach it with joy.
So I remember, this brings me to something. I remember that I mentioned, I think like on stories, that I am really bad with like self-care. And that I didn't really know what to do about that. Like, I'm just really bad at just like taking a moment to take care for myself, like what am I needing type thing. And I was asking people like, oh, share ideas with me, some of your self-care routines. And I'm never going to forget, you responded to it and you said, what do you enjoy? What do you enjoy doing? So I guess like that's another thing too. Like I sense that a lot of people like don't know exactly what they're missing or what they want.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, you did mention like, again, allowing yourself to sit with yourself and remember seeing what you enjoy doing, or I guess what aligns with you, the actions that you're taking. Mm-hmm. What other things could people do to start following their intuition, or even start that practice of listening to their intuition?
You know, so for me, it would be, that's a great question. Like, and everything is a opportunity for connecting to your higher self, whether it's choosing your breakfast in the morning, deciding what you're going to wear, you know, going to a certain place for any experience. Like, this is one of the reasons why I work with those chakra cards and I use the senses, because our bodies tell us things. Like, parts of our bodies give us certain messages, you know. You know, I don't know. So I was talking to someone yesterday and they were like, oh, you know, I don't, they were saying something about how like they were telling the truth, but they kept on coughing. And so from an energetic perspective, that's in the throat, and the throat chakra is your communication chakra, your truth chakra. And I didn't want to be like, I don't think you're telling me the truth, because every time you're like, it's real, it's fine, and they kept on coughing, and I'm like, your body is telling you no, right?
Whoa.
Right. And so I would say, connect to your body. Learn about your body. I knew someone who whenever they got into a fight with their husband, they would lose their voice, right? Because they felt powerless communicating to their spouse, right? Mm-hmm. And so I know people who, whenever they have to be assertive at work, they get like major stomach issues. And the stomach issue, part of it is the solar plexus, which is how we present it to our world, and the confidence center. So it's like, how can you strengthen that area, right? Mm-hmm. I know people who, when they have to do something that's a really like, deep relationship thing, whether with a partner or with a family member, they get chest pains or they feel short of breath. That's your heart chakra. How are you not connecting to the one love, regardless of the dynamic of the relationship? So your body tells you mm-hmm. every situation. We're not always paying attention to it.
Yeah. That is so good. That is so good. I'm going to rewind this and listen to that again. Oh my God, that's a different conversation in regards to our chakras, because I'm not that familiar with it. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so amazing.
So connect to your body, right? Yeah. Your body tells you things.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know for sure that's not something that we all do. I used to be that way. I used to be that person that would never listen. I'm that person that's like, I can be in so much pain now. I'm just like blocking it out. I never really just stop to like care for my body. That's something that I'm definitely working on this year when I'm thinking about. That's why I really wanted to create this series on self-care and self-love, because I know I lack it. I know I definitely lack it. So I just wanted to make sure that I had someone that would really give us all the good deets and on the steps for that. So I guess another thing that comes to my mind that I would love to hear your feedback on was perfectionist. Being a perfectionist. And, I'm starting to hear a lot of people, especially like becoming a coach has introduced me to so many people, and and a lot of people that are side hustling and have really stressful jobs, really demanding jobs, and then coming home, working on their side hustle, doing all these things to like hopefully have this take off and let this be their full-time job. And I'm hearing a lot of burnout. I'm hearing a lot of, I need to be perfect in both my roles, because obviously my job doesn't know what's going on. And I need to like be the best at X, whatever side hustle you're doing. And I'm starting to hear about panic attacks and suffering from anxiety. I'm hearing a lot of people. I'm a true believer in therapy. I think everyone should go to therapy. So it's especially, healing old wounds and stuff like that. And just like not open to that. So I think, that's something else that I wanted to hear your thoughts on in regards to perfectionism and just handling so much in the time that we have.
Well, I can't help but think that perfectionism really is so tied to self-compassion, because, when I think about perfection, I think of this sense of like doing no wrong, right? And when I think about the human experience, so when I start my coaching sessions, I tell my clients that I believe that life is a choose your own adventure. This is, people struggle between destiny and free will, and I think it's both, right? We're on this path. We wrote this path before we got here, and there are multiple endings. There is not one ending, right? And so the idea of perfectionism implies this idea there's only one way of doing things, only one result, and it's very linear. But choose your own adventure. I don't know if you remember those books. It's like, okay, we're going to start on page 5, and then you're going to read a couple pages, and they might send you to page 46, and then maybe you go back to page 30. And life is not linear. Like the emotional experience is not linear, right? Like you don't go from bad to feeling good and stay there. We have these like regressions and loops and waves. So perfection to me then allows for a dimension of low self-compassion, which is self-judgment, to kick in, right? And so we hold ourselves to this linear one way of seeing and doing things, and something goes wrong, right? Which is also like just an experience of life.
Right.
Our judgment goes, oh, you did this wrong. This shouldn't have, you should, we go into the back and we go, I could have done this. Oh, I should have done that. Oh, I should have prepared this, or I should have sent that email, or should have, given myself more time. And we start holding ourselves into experiences that we cannot fix. And so we go into this loop, and that's where, you get some of this anxiety, right? This, trying to control things that are out of your control because the time has passed and the result cannot change, instead of saying, okay, so that really sucked. What can I do to fix it right now? It's almost like the sense of perfectionism doesn't allow you to be in the moment. It makes you either only look towards this future which you're wanting and fixing things in the past, instead of saying, hey, I'm here right now. This is the experience I'm having. What can I do right now? If something goes wrong, what is in this moment that I'm feeling? How can I move forward? What are the things that I can address right now? Aspect of self-compassion, which is mindfulness. So just as a recap for those who are not familiar with Kristen Neff's work, she believes there are 3 dimensions to self-compassion, which are comprised of 2 opposing things. There's self-judgment versus self-kindness, which perfectionism doesn't allow for self-kindness if you do something wrong.
Right.
And there is mindfulness versus over-identification. So if something goes wrong, are we over-identifying like, oh, that was so terrible, blah, 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 instead of saying, oh, you know what? That happened. How can I see this in a different way? And the third one is isolation versus shared humanity. So, when we remember that we're not the only ones who have these issues, that we're not the only ones who have made a mistake, then we're allowed to, remember that we're part of a human collective, instead of isolating and being like, I'm the only one that this happens to. No one understands my suffering, which also lead to physical isolation and not wanting to share space and time with people.
Oh, wow.
Perfectionism, like if you can build your self-compassion muscle, you can begin to realize that perfectionism is a construct of our collective right now regarding where we should be and what we should be doing. And it really limits our full potential to enjoy our journey, right? Because it's sometimes those mistakes really allow for bigger miracles. Like, I know someone who was left at the altar the day before her wedding, and the groom ran away with her best friend. And that was so devastating. And then she left to go study abroad in another country and met the love of her life, who was such a more kind and caring, compassionate human being than the man she was originally supposed to marry. So, at that moment, she could have been like, my life was so perfect. I was ready to get married to this rich guy. Blah. And then she married this human being who gave her so much more. Had she been fixated on like that experience and how imperfect her life was, she wouldn't have allowed this opportunity to expand, travel abroad, and really meet the one she was supposed to meet, right?
Yeah. That actually reminds me of something, 2 things, like you just mentioned, in regards to, we don't realize how much rules that we've created in our lives. The rules of like, these need to be a certain way. And then that's when that anxiety comes up, or like you feel that panic, like things are not going the path that I projected. So just, this is wrong type thing. So I try to think of that whenever I'm feeling that way. It's like, what subconsciously did I make up in my mind that needed to happen that's causing me to feel this stress or feel this anxiety? So that's just something that came to my mind as you were talking about that. In addition to that, as I mentioned, that I used to suffer really bad from depression and stuff like that. And again, I did not know the tools, hear about the tools of how to handle emotions and stuff like that. And it's funny. I remember being younger, and I consider myself to be a very sensitive person. And I just remember thinking, my God, like I just have this intense feeling of feeling like so emotional, like these emotions are just so strong, and feeling like I can't wait for that to like go away type of thing, those strong feelings. But as I've gotten older and I've been doing this work, like it's funny how it's like I wouldn't change a single bit of it.
No,
Like,
I know.
for me, it's like all this was all meant to happen because it led me to where I am today.
Yeah.
And I think there's something that Tony Robbins said too, like these things that we go through that are really, really hard are all about making us stronger and then helping that next person that's going through something that's really, really hard, and then just providing that service and just going along and just making, I mean, that's honestly the reason why I got into coaching, because for me, with everything that's happening in the world right now, it's like, I want to be there for someone that like wants to live their life intentionally and just help them get there, because this world could be such a sad and horrible place right now. So that's the way I envision it. But yeah, in regards to like our stories and the things in our past, and it's just accepting and being like, oh my God, like I went through all of that and I survived, and I'm here and I'm stronger than ever, and I'm here to help that next person that's maybe going through that.
And so I want to honor that story about how you really appreciated how everything, not only how everything brought you to where you were and how it's supposed to be, but also the sense of being of service to others, right? Mm-hmm. Because what you've learned is that your feelings won't kill you, and that each thing that happened made you strong. And people are so afraid to face their feelings, that they don't build the muscle to feel their feels, right? Mm-hmm. It's like people are afraid to feel their feels. Yeah. And just like, it's not the worst thing that can happen. It's lack of addressing it or the consequences of not addressing it that could be dangerous, right?
Right. Like, yeah, I think I've heard that before. Whenever you think of a situation that you want to do, but you're scared to do it, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to feel an emotion. When it comes down to it. I heard someone say that before, that makes it sound so simple, and it makes you be like, why am I so worried? I'm going to probably feel uncomfortable for a little bit. I probably might feel a little uneasy for a little bit. But just as most things, it will go away and I'll feel better after a little bit. But, it's either you feel that feeling of regret, like feeling of regret that you didn't do it, or you feel that discomfort, which will eventually go away, but will help propel you to the next phase of whatever.
Or you can feel growth, right? Like I will admit I had, I'm going to share a vulnerable story. It's not that vulnerable, but it's really funny, right? I hadn't dated in a while, and I had a crush on this person, and my friend was like, if you don't tell them on my birthday, I'm not speaking to you. I was so afraid to tell this person I liked, that I was friends with, and I liked them. And there was this like, that sense of panic that you get when you're like, you probably should only get that like if you're feeling threatened by like a savage animal. And so, I just had this moment where I told them, and nothing terrible happened. They didn't like me back, but they're like, hey, this isn't right, but like, I want to be your friend still. I'm like, oh, okay. And the sense of relief that I got from just facing that emotion, sharing it, and then going through it. And that's a very light version of feeling your feelings, because intense feelings. But even that, like even feeling something and sharing it with someone because it's such an intense thing is scary for people. Right. We should, and then I realized, after that moment, I was like, I could just tell people I like them, and it's not going to kill me. It's actually kind of like, it's going to allow me to like not fixate on that person because they don't like me, and I can move on to another one. It's so freeing in so many ways.
Yes. Oh, so good. Such a great example. Such a good example.
So I always think about that. Like I had this moment when I was done. I'm like, why did I wait this long? I wasted so much time fixating on this person. Right. But it was a lesson in, like, had I not gone through that, I couldn't be able to tell other people, like you said, share the light. Like I actually went through it, and it's not going to kill you. In fact, you're going to not waste your time with that person.
Yeah. And I think for other of us, for other things that are like, again, like I feel like so many people are so afraid to be themselves or follow whatever it is that they want to do. I think when we think about it, and like, again, remembering the facts, right? Like what we were talking about earlier, like you're not going to die. Yeah. You're not going to die. Yeah. It's going to be really uncomfortable, but it's either you're going to feel uncomfortable now for not doing it, or you're going to feel uncomfortable and still move forward. That's the thing.
Exactly. And that's why coaching is amazing, because we go, okay, what are the steps you can take to move forward?
Yes. These were such good, these were such good conversations, and just different things that I keep hearing from people that I've coached, and obviously from personal experience myself. And I think you gave such tangible things to start working on to be more self-compassionate with ourselves, and also just even being more compassionate to others that are around us, because really at the end we are in full control of how we feel, even with the interactions and with people that are not, I guess, that are not in that realm as you. I guess you're always going to deal with those type of people. But I did want to, before you shared so much, but one last thing that I wanted people to know is just how to find you and to hear more of your services, because obviously I think you're amazing and people need to follow you.
So right now I'm primarily on Instagram, like most people my age. So you can find me at Ilona Pamplona. So my real name is Ilona Castro, but I got a nickname back in the day, Ilona Pamplona, and it stuck, and it just feels so me. So Pamplona, like the city in Spain, and Ilona is Ilona. It's Hungarian for Helen, even though I'm not Hungarian. And I'm actually working on a website with a designer, so we're right now. So by March or April, you should be able to go to ilonapamplona.com and really begin to dig into my work, whether it's the clarity sessions, the coaching sessions, or the workshops. I am taking the workshops on the road. I'm going to San Antonio in April, trying to create like an East Coast tour, just because I believe in this work and feeling your feelings so deeply. I'll also joke, most of my clients this past week have cried, and it's been a good cry, this idea of like, you need to let those feelings out. And so if you have been, if you want to feel something and you want a safe container for it, this work is really so safe to do it in, because coaching is a sacred contract, I believe. Even though some coaches are much more academic and methodical about it, it is a safe container for someone to express their inner landscape, to really discover who they are. I'm really excited to take this on the road and share this with more people.
That's so exciting. So yeah, even though you don't have your website up, you can definitely, you definitely can work with people even now through Instagram. You can always DM you, I'm sure, to reach out to you in regards to your services. But yeah, I hope people do, because you are amazing and you shared such goodness today. And I'm excited to share this with more and more people to get to know you, Ilona, because you are just amazing and a light.
Well, I feel the same way about you, and I don't know if I should share the card that I pulled before our reading.
Yes, please do.
Well, I have many decks. I mean, I use the chakra cards for our work, but I pull out some divine feminine cards to help me guide the work that I'm doing on a particular day. And I feel like this was so appropriate, and it's Amaterasu, which was a goddess of light. So the fact that you're calling me light is like, okay, this is so funny that it's the message. But it's all about, we are all sacred mirrors reflecting back the same light. And so one thing that I want people to carry is, because I think self-compassion sometimes also comes with self-comparison. And so if you see something in someone else, I think one of the messages is there's a lot of comparison issues, and like seeing something in someone else, like thinking different from someone else, but really anything you see in someone else is a reflection of something in you. And so instead of, just saying, oh, look at how great that person, or look at how bad that person is, ask yourself, what is triggering this within me? What is inside of me that is triggering this thought or this feeling? Because then you can begin to also be more kindly towards yourself, feel more kindly towards yourself in ways, and release it.
That is a wonderful card, and I'm so glad you shared that, because I guess I was sharing with you that that I just see you as like, oh my God. And you were like, no, don't do it that way.
We're all the same. We really are. Oh, I mean, we are all. So, okay, I know we're at the end, but I'm going to digress a little bit. If you've ever read a Dr. Bronner's soap label, he was a really funny guy, and he had this message. He's got these crazy messages, but one of the biggest one is all one in all caps, because he really believed that everyone on this planet, we are all one. And when we really connect to that energy, we can really tap into that compassion for yourself, compassion for others, compassion for all things and beings.
That's wonderful. And that's a great way to end our conversation, Ilona. And thank you so much again for being a part of this. I'm sure a lot of people get so much goodness from this conversation. Please go check her out on Instagram. And you said it was Ilona Pamplona. right?
Yeah, IlonaPamplona.com.
Perfect. That's also your Instagram handle as well.
Yes, Ilona Pamplona.
We share on the post and how to contact you and all of your services and stuff and all the goodness. So thank you so much again for being a part of this series on self-care, self-love, and self-compassion.
Love it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Keep on being the light, Belinda.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Bye.